we'll get started. Hello, my name is Adam Diamond. I teach here in the Global Environmental Politics program at American University in the School of International Service. And I want to welcome you to our panel discussion today on spreading agroecology and creating food sovereignty from the ground up, challenges and opportunities. Today we get to hear from a diverse group of scholars and practitioners who work throughout Africa, the Americas, and Asia on agroecology, food sovereignty, the effects of corporate consolidation in agri-food systems on small farmers, and the politics of food aid. I'd like to thank Steve Brescia, to the far left, Executive Director of Groundswell International, for organizing this panel in collaboration with the Global Environmental Politics Program, Carolyn Turkley, who is the GEP Program Coordinator, for working on publicity and logistics, and Danielle Nierenberg, who is President of Food Tank, who initially arranged this event, but she was unable to be here, but she got this publicized through Food Tank's extensive network. The title for this event was inspired in part by recent discussions on the Diversified Farming Systems listserv on the topic of, if agroecology is so great, why is it not happening more? Predictably, the discussion then went down the road of how there are structural barriers to smallholders entering markets, how the rules of the game are biased in favor of multinational corporations, industrial farming, export agriculture, and large farmers. But I was left wondering, is this all there is to the story? Are scholars sympathetic to the flowering of agroecology, defined as a whole systems approach to agriculture and food systems development based on traditional knowledge, alternative agriculture, and local food system experiences, perhaps too quick to point out the barriers? Too quick to explain why food systems are not sustainable, are not just, do not adequately feed the world's population, and are far too beholden to the interests of the wealthy and powerful. Yes, we need to look at obstacles, but we also need to highlight successes, look for places where change is happening, learn from these successes, and examine what it would take for them to multiply. This is where agroecology links up with food sovereignty. Food sovereignty, defined by the International Assessment of Agricultural Science and Technology for Development, an intergovernmental panel under the auspices of the United Nations and the World Bank, defines it as the right of peoples and sovereign states to democratically determine their own agricultural and food policies. So it's both a set of concepts and aspirations and actually existing social movements with millions of members throughout the global south and the global north. Food sovereignty aims to increase food self-sufficiency and self-determination of communities and regions around the world that are too often producing and consuming food according to the dictates of what will make the most money for food exporters, processors, and retailers, rather than what will nourish people, the soil, and communities. Agroecology provides a set of practical tools for designing food systems that are compatible with the principles of food sovereignty, for designing food systems that meet the needs of farmers, eaters, rural communities, and agricultural landscapes. Groundswell International is a global non-government organization that seeks to implement agroecology through partnerships with local NGOs around the world that are working directly with farmers, building on traditional practices and engaging in peer-to-peer sharing. Steve Brescia, Executive Director of Groundswell, will provide an overview of his organization's work in the Americas, Africa, and Asia, and then we'll move on to Scott Freeman, who is a professor here at American University, an environmental anthropologist who will talk about food aid politics in Haiti and the challenges to implementing agroecological practices there, given political conditions, domestically and internationally. Marian Dixon was scheduled to talk about food sovereignty in Egypt, but she sends her regrets and was ill and not able to make it today. Bern Gori from CIKOD, a Groundswell partner in Ghana, will talk about agroecological solutions to hunger in Ghana and elsewhere in Africa, and Ross Marie Borge from Eco Rural will talk about sustainable food systems in Ecuador. So we'll have each panelist talk for about 10 minutes, and then we'll have a moderated discussion with the audience. So first, Steve Brescia.
Thanks very much. It's really nice to be here. Appreciate everybody taking the time to be with us today. I actually did a master's degree, I think it was back in 91. I have to check my CV here at American University in International Development. So anyway, it's nice to reconnect. And yeah, as Adam mentioned, Groundswell is an organization that brings together partner NGOs working in 10 countries right now in West Africa, the Americas, and Asia. So at the moment we are in Nepal, in West Africa, we're in Burkina Faso, Ghana, Mali, Senegal, and Burkina Faso, Mali, Senegal, and Ghana, yeah. And then in Haiti, Honduras, Guatemala, and Ecuador, and also a small program in North Carolina in the U.S. And the core themes that we work on are scaling agroecology, strengthening and spreading agroecology, and sustainable local food systems and markets. Just to introduce a bit further my colleagues here, Ross Borja, is, as Adam mentioned, is the executive director of our partner in Ecuador, Ecorural, and they're doing dynamic work, which she will talk about, from the community to the policy to the broader movement level. Bern Guri, as was mentioned, is the director of CICOD in Ghana. He also wears many other hats, one of which is he is the chair of the Alliance for Food Sovereignty in Africa, and that's a network of networks, about, I believe, 25 or so networks across the continent, representing 40 or so countries. And it's a really important space, growing space, to be working on these issues. And so Bern is, connected from the community level, from where he comes from in Upper West Ghana, to the national policy level, and across the continent as well. And one thing to point out is that the Alliance for Food Sovereignty in Africa has just been named as a recipient of the Food Sovereignty Prize by the U.S. Food Sovereignty Alliance. So that's a great honor, and he'll be going to Seattle next weekend to receive that award. And so I encourage you all to tune into that online and observe what's happening there. So to talk a little bit more about what Groundswell does, I don't know if some of you who are familiar with this slide who study these issues, but this is the International Assessment of Agricultural Knowledge, Science, and Technology for Development, maybe the worst name ever, but it created a very important study, the ISTAD study in 2008. It was a consultation over, I believe, more than 5 years in multiple countries and consultations around the world with actors from the UN level to corporate level to government levels to civil society levels. And the basic conclusion, as they asked a broad set of questions, was this: that we have to transition from we can't continue with business as usual. We have to transition to agroecological, more sustainable systems. And if you look at the graph, it goes from low productivity to high productivity on one axis, and then from unsustainable to sustainable. So where we currently are in the conventional industrial system is very productive, but extremely unsustainable and generating all sorts of problems and challenges, as you know. And we need to continue to be productive, but move towards sustainable. And that brings us to agroecological systems on the other side of this, and this arrow. And part of the reason that we find this valuable is because it's messy and complicated, and you have to start where you are, and this touches on farmers that are, industrialized in the developed world, to peasant farmers and indigenous farmers, and in each case, people need to start where they are and work to make that transition. So Groundswell tends to work more with marginalized rural communities, indigenous communities in the developing world, and kind of at the bottom of this graph here to try to promote that. So that's sort of a core, framing for what we're all about. Want to just give a little context to what Bern is going to talk about, as well as Ross is going to talk about. And again, in terms of the previous side, what we actually do as Groundswell is, we are this platform, this partnership of local organizations. We work together to create plans at a regional level, ideally, for action. How can we spread this work and strengthen this work? For learning together, how can we share what strategies that are effective and learn from each other and from other allies and organizations? And for affecting policies and people's understanding at the paradigm level about how these things can in fact be real solutions that can be scaled and get beyond this question of why isn't everybody doing this? And there's a number of challenging barriers, which you mentioned some of in terms of actually making this happen. So just to look at a grounded sense of what this looks like in the Sahel. So this band across Africa, as you know, is the Sahel. And we are working in these 4 countries in the areas of the red circle, just below the Sahel. And in this area, there's about 20 million people a year in recent years in West Africa suffering from severe hunger and in need of humanitarian aid to stay alive. And that's a significant spike because of the failure of industrialized agriculture models and sort of the neoliberal economic model, as well as the impacts of climate change and other things, as you'll see. So we're trying to work with communities in this area to spread and strengthen these strategies. And in the zone where we're working, there are 12 million people that, we're not going to work with these people directly, but working with numbers of allies to trying to generate solutions that can make a real difference for 12 million people's lives at this level as a part of, broader movements that we're part of. So that's the sort of the broad context of where we are in the Sahel. And again, Bern will give you some of the grounded information about what that looks like in Ghana. So, just an example of what the hunger crisis means in this part of the world. This is a photo from our colleague Peter Goebbels, who did this study on pathways to resilience in the Sahel. And one of the survival strategies for hunger is women going out and looking for termite mounds. These are large termite mounds, digging them up and breaking them out and trying to find the grains that termites have stored in these termite mounds so that they can then gather these grains and go back and cook them and feed their families. So these are the kinds of severe crisis that people are living with and that we need to work together to find solutions to. And this is a daily activity for many, among others, to try to survive in this part of Africa. Part of the background there, and again, Bern will give more details from the Ghana perspective, is the traditional strategy of producing over the years has been slash and burn, clearing the land and burning off trees, and that used to work when people could move and fallow their land, and after 20 years, 15 years, 10 years, the land would be restored through fallowing practices of trees and bush in the area. But now the land is too constrained, the availability of the land, so farmers are needing to find alternative solutions. And the point is that these solutions, these solutions do exist, and how do we spread them? So one of them that exists is farmer-managed natural regeneration of trees. So this is a shift in farmers' strategies to allow the trees to come back. One thing that's been discovered by farmers and activists and others working on these issues and NGOs is that in spite of the slash and burn, there's a living forest of roots and stumps that remains under the ground. So how can we work with farmers with their knowledge and understanding, their traditional knowledge, to allow those trees to regenerate and to integrate them into the farming systems instead of thinking about clean fields? How can we have agroforestry fields? And as you might imagine, this is incredibly effective. This generates multiple benefits in terms of nitrogen fixing, in terms of organic matter for soils, in terms of wood so that women don't have to walk so far for firewood, fodder for animals, and the manure that can generate. So it creates a regenerative system that works and that is in fact spreading at scale across some parts of the Sahel. So that's one part that we're trying to help to spark and support as well in different places where we work. And then in Latin America and the Caribbean, just to touch on some of the challenges that Ross is going to speak more about, there are similar production challenges, but, and again, we're not going to talk about everything here today, but focus on a couple of issues. But one is the issue of local markets. About 60% of the food consumed by people in Latin America is produced by family farmers still. And yet there's this, promotion of, external imports and exports, and rather than efforts to strengthen local markets. Some of those exist, as you know, but there's a lot more that can be done to strengthen that area. So we're trying to work with partners through this process of action and learning and innovation to support these strategies and learn from others and share them with others. And then the whole issue of farmer seed systems. There's, there's a lot of, focus on GMOs and hybrid seeds and things like that. Most of, great majority of the food crops, of the basic food crops, are still in the hands of family farmers and informal food systems, but these genetic resources are being degenerated, being ignored, being displaced in some cases, which is a real danger for food security and the seeds that farmers use to produce the food that people eat in these countries. So again, Ross will give some more ideas about how this work is going forward in Ecuador. And I think that's where I was going to stop for the moment. Perhaps I can pick up later during the questions, but I think we're going to hear about Haiti next, and we're doing quite a bit with peasant associations there, 17 peasant associations representing about 25,000 direct members and a broader population in the catchment area, about 200,000 people, to try to build out some of these strategies as well. So it'll be interesting to hear your comments on Haiti, and I can maybe share later how some of that is taking place.
Wonderful. So thanks very much for that, and thanks very much for having me. So my name's Scott Freeman. I'm an environmental anthropologist. I'm at the School of International Service here at AU. And my research has been in the Dominican Republic and Haiti, and I've been working there since 2005 on both sides of the island. And today what I want to do is as Adam said, sort of think about the rather unfortunate context in which food sovereignty and agroecology movements are taking place, sort of set the stage for this conversation about what we're working against, and particularly in a country like Haiti. And I don't think I could begin such a conversation without noting the hurricane and the absolute devastation that we don't know the extent of, but I work in the Tiburon Peninsula, quite near Les Anglais, which is where the eye of the storm passed over 2 nights ago. And so this is an area that is very agricultural, very driven by peanut farming for cash as well. And so this is a particularly important conversation as farmers are waiting to harvest their goods, and we'll see sort of the extent of the damage, which unfortunately I think is going to be quite heavy. So I wanted to talk about 3 things, and I will make sure that I do so within the time period. And the first is to talk about the context in which we should think about existing agroecology movements through Haiti, and particularly neoliberal type reforms that occurred in the 1990s. And then I want to take that and think about humanitarian efforts at sort of food security. Because I think actually, oddly, one of the issues that we confront when talking about food sovereignty is food security. And so I want to talk about that context a bit, and then finally end up with thinking about the farmer's perspective and how we can create a context in which farmers sort of naturally the long-time practices of farmers can actually sort of blossom and sort of fuel this agroecology movement. So I think for Haiti, the introduction of U.S. rice has been the most notable issue of food security and food sovereignty in the past 50 years. In 1995, there was President Aristide was out of power, and at the time, Bill Clinton, who was president, sort of was negotiating a deal by which he could come back to power. One of the issues that Clinton wanted to bring up was the tariffs that were supporting Haitian agriculture. So at the time, the tariffs were at 35%. That is to say, the Haitian market was protected by a 35% tax on any imported rice. The condition for Aristide's return as part of these neoliberal reforms, which focus on diminishing those barriers to free trade, was to take that rice tariff from 35% down to 3%. And U.S. aid at the time had said that a change in the tariffs, let me make sure I get, any change in the tariff reduction, as much as 3 to 10% would devastate the Haitian rice industry. And the reduction was on the level of 20%, 25%, right? So overnight, we not only see the Haitian rice industry collapse, but what's really important to think about is the way that these larger policies start to affect consumption patterns within Haiti. At the time, for example, if you talk to Haitians now who are 50 years old or so, they will tell you that the context in which they ate rice was very different when they were growing up. Rice was a Sunday meal, a special sort of occasion, right? During the week, plantains, sweet potatoes, yams, pumpkin, beans, and maize were the staples. But now what we see is a complete switch. Rice is the staple that is feeding urban populations. And those other products, which are still being farmed far more so than rice, are garnish, right? So that context of moving the consumptive patterns of an entire country has a massive impact on the ability of farmers to produce, to sell, and compete in a market, right? Not only just with rice, but sweet potato with rice or plantains with rice. So these, and that rice, unfortunately, right, that rice in the United States is heavily subsidized. So there's really no way that Haitian rice could compete with a U.S. subsidy. And it's also an interesting note where the rice came from, which was Arkansas, right? Shocking. Bill Clinton is also from Arkansas. And it's not to say that Bill Clinton didn't realize the problem of the error of his ways. He has since apologized for that and recognizes sort of destroying this economy, which I think is an interesting note, particularly in the election in which Haitian populations in Miami are actually quite against the Clintons, and there is something to be said for their experience of the Clinton arm in Haiti's economy, particularly as it pertains to agriculture and food. So that's the first sort of scenario that I wanted to paint in the context in which struggles of agroecology are developing. The second is the way that this has translated into Haiti as a needy and poor country, so that food donations coming from the United States or other countries are seen as a real benefit, as opposed to a problematic one. Recently, Adam Garrett and myself have written an article about the donation of peanuts into Haiti as United States peanuts through the UN to Haiti as a sort of measure to simply give food, right? Haiti is poor and needs food, and therefore will supply peanuts, which can be made into peanut butter. This completely ignores the fact that Haiti has its own peanut industry, its own amazing peanut butter, right? So the way that international debates and discussions about food security occur are by feeding populations, but often ignore the existing markets, the existing domestic markets within a country. And of course, unfortunately, also the peanut tail is all too similar to the rice tail, in which U.S. subsidies have produced a glut of peanuts that needs to be distributed. So that's sort of an interesting switch, right? We went from sort of neoliberal adjustments of an economy's policy to a discussion about how humanitarian aid actually reinforces the existing problems in agriculture in a country. And so farmers that I work with on the Southwest coast, and I think this is a really important thing to keep in mind, especially as we'll hear about more of these movements. Farmers I have found in Haiti who are depicted often as removed, isolated, rural, unaware, are incredibly aware of the macroeconomic context in which they are producing food. And I think that's incredibly important to keep in mind, that farmers are aware that what they are producing is competing against subsidized US rice or imported Dominican eggs that are also imported at such a price as to decimate the markets within Haiti. But farmers themselves are practicing strategies that one could define as agroecological. That is to say, they are not monocropping. They're mixing nitrogen-fixing crops with maize. They are planting crops that need to be harvested at different times. This is not to say that they're practicing perfect models of agroecology, and I think we can discuss the ways that those models can be improved by increased attention to the agricultural sector in Haiti. But it is to say that the existing practices and awareness of farmers in Haiti is ready and geared towards the potential for a real blossoming of agroecology. And so I think that one of the conversations that I think that we're moving towards today in the panel is how do we create the conditions by which farmers can continue to produce good food in an ecologically minded way that feeds a population and sort of eliminates external influence. Haitian elections are happening this Sunday and are still on despite the hurricane. And this is the first time that the elections have been financed only by Haitians themselves. So there's no international interference. And so as sort of an ending note, I wonder, right, if this moment of political sovereignty can also be thought of and captured by thinking about food sovereignty as well. So I will end there.
So, let's see. Can I take this out? Ross speaks and understands English very well, but prefers that I translate for her for this part of it. I'm sure she'll do questions in English. So, I just want to mention before we start, this picture here is a Haitian peanut farmers seed bank. So one of the ways we do that is strengthening farmers groups in Haiti to create their own seed banks, their own agroecological processes. So anyway.
Okay. Buenas tardes con todos. Es un placer estar aquí con ustedes y tener la oportunidad de compartir un poco del trabajo que hacemos en Ecuador.
So good afternoon to everybody. It's great to be with you here today and to share a little bit of the work that we're doing in Ecuador with EcoRural.
Voy a empezar explicando un poco del contexto que tenemos actualmente en Ecuador y después voy a pasar algunas de las experiencias del trabajo que hace EcoRural con pequeños agricultores en la Sierra Centro y Norte del país. Bueno,
I'm doing too many things. Is there a way to make that work again? Press what? There it is. Okay. Can you hold that thing?
Yeah.
Okay. So she said she wanted to first explain a little bit about the context where they're working and the type of work that they're doing.
Bueno, como ustedes pueden ver, ¿dónde está ubicado Ecuador? Estamos trabajando en la Sierra Centro y Norte del país en temas relacionados con los sistemas locales de alimento y cómo fortalecer la propuesta agroecológica.
So they're working in the Andean mountains in the central and northern part of the Sierra, working on agroecological practices and local food systems.
Algunos de los desafíos que enfrentan los pequeños productores en Ecuador, sobre todo en la Sierra Central, tienen que ver con la degradación de los suelos, la erosión genética y este cambio en la alimentación.
So some of the challenges that they're confronting locally are the genetic erosion of seeds, soil degradation due to the practices, and then this nutritional transition in terms of moving towards modern diets.
Entonces, dentro de este contexto, el tema de la agricultura familiar es muy relevante, ya que, como Steve explicó, alrededor del 60 y 70% de los alimentos que son consumidos en las ciudades provienen de esta pequeña agricultura.
So within this context, family farming is crucially important, and as was explained earlier, about 60 to 70% of the food consumed by urban and rural populations is produced by family farmers in the country.
Y del otro tema relacionado con la alimentación es que el sistema semillero informal, es decir, el sistema de las semillas que provienen de los agricultores, son la fuente principal para la siembra de los cultivos prioritarios.
So the other part of this is that the informal farmer seed systems are the principal source of seeds for these production of these food crops.
Relacionado con el tema de semillas, de la agroecología y los sistemas alimentarios, también podríamos decir que Ecuador en el 2000, a partir del 2005, las organizaciones de la sociedad civil empezaron a organizarse para hacer un cambio en cómo mirábamos los alimentos.
So as of 2005, a lot of the civil society in Ecuador organized themselves to try to make changes within the system and the laws in the country to promote agroecology and food sovereignty.
Entonces, el cambio... No, creo que... tenemos tiempo, sí.
No, tenemos tiempo.
Yeah.
But just to explain here, you know,
Yeah.
as in the slide, this is the percentage of food crops coming from the various from family farmers for the various food crops. And then, ¿quieres explicar esto?
Sí, sí, sí. Como mencionaba anteriormente, cuando hablamos de los cultivos que pertenecen a la canasta básica en Ecuador, muchos de estos cultivos son sembrados porque los agricultores pueden proveer su semilla. En el caso de la papa, por ejemplo, que es un cultivo bastante importante en Ecuador, apenas el 1% viene viene de semilla certificada, el 99% viene de semilla desde los agricultores.
So yeah, once again, some of the data on the importance of local farmer informal seed systems, and she mentioned some of the data here. The specific case of potatoes, which of course is a crucial food crop in the Andes, 99% comes from farmer informal seed systems and seed saving and sharing, and only 1% from certified seeds.
Yeah. Entonces, como mencionaba, las organizaciones de la sociedad civil empezaron a organizarse con la idea de hacer un cambio en cómo mirábamos los alimentos y más que hablar solamente de seguridad alimentaria, la idea era hablar de soberanía alimentaria.
So as you mentioned, civil society organized and really campaigned and pushed for food sovereignty as a framework for policies in Ecuador rather than just food security.
Entonces, muchas organizaciones fueron consultadas, se hicieron debates y en 2009 fue aprobada la Ley de Soberanía Alimentaria que promovía la agroecología como una estrategia para los pequeños productores, pero también vinculado a una alimentación sana.
So after a lot of work was by civil society and campaigning in 2009, there was a food sovereignty law passed by the Ecuadorian government, which supported, food sovereignty and agroecological production and local biodiversity as elements of the system.
Entonces, actualmente tenemos una ley muy progresista en Ecuador sobre la soberanía alimentaria que incluso da derechos a la naturaleza y en este momento están en discusión dos leyes principales que son la ley de semillas y la ley de fomento agroecológico.
So right now on paper, and there's very positive laws in terms of food sovereignty and agroecology, and there are two current legal proposals of law that are being debated at the moment. One on seed systems and and promotion of agroecology is another.
Sin embargo, últimamente hay un cambio en la posición del gobierno con respecto a estas semillas y con respecto a estas leyes y ahora se está promoviendo en cambio un cambio en la matriz productiva, es decir, que en vez de enfocar en la pequeña producción, se está enfocando en los cultivos que son para exportación, ¿no?
So in spite of that situation, there's growing contradictions and tensions within the country around these issues, and a shift in the focus of the government to propose new national agricultural priorities focused on export crops and promoting genetically modified seeds and the introduction of those. And the question there being, what is the future of family farming in this context?
Y la otra discusión que estamos teniendo actualmente es sobre el etiquetado. Hay varias políticas públicas que han tratado de fomentar un sistema alimentario más saludable. Se expidió hace un par de años una ley de etiquetado en la cual permite a los consumidores saber qué es lo que están consumiendo, pero, como digo, el gobierno está cambiando su mirada sobre los alimentos y la pequeña agricultura.
So another positive effort at the legal and regulatory level is labeling law, which is passed in the country, and they use a stoplight, a semáforo, like so red, green, red, yellow, green in terms of the level of sugar and fats and things like that, so people can easily understand what they're eating and make decisions about it. So that's been seen as a positive thing, but is now being changed and weakened as well. So it's another one of these rising incoherencies.
Pero a pesar de todo este contexto, entre que es un contexto favorable y también los nuevos desafíos alrededor de la política, vemos que sí podemos encontrar esperanza en las pequeñas fincas con las cuales trabajamos y quienes están promoviendo la agroecología.
So in this context, we also see that in working with the communities that Ecorural works with, there are great opportunities of hope as well to build upon agroecological strategies of Andean farmers.
Como había mencionado, nosotros trabajamos con poblaciones indígenas en la Sierra del Ecuador y uno de los primeros temas que empezamos a discutir fue cómo reconstruimos el suelo, como algo fundamental cuando hablamos de agroecología.
So we work in indigenous communities, as we said, in the Andean highlands, and one of the first issues we were discussing with them is how can we recover soils and regenerate the soils in these communities.
Otro de los temas importantes cuando hablamos de agroecología es el tema de las semillas. A pesar de que estas comunidades han mantenido fuertemente sus tradiciones, porque es una agricultura andina, donde manejan bastante de los principios agroecológicos. Sin embargo, las comunidades sintieron que estaban perdiendo sus semillas y que eso estaba vinculado con perder su cultura, su identidad.
So another issue we've worked on with communities on is the issue of seed systems. In many cases, many of the practices are agroecological, the traditional Andean farmers, but they've also expressed to us that they were losing their genetic biodiversity, their seeds, and that was a loss of their culture and their identity as well. So we've been working with them to recover and strengthen those local seed systems as well.
Entonces, a través de procesos de investigación, acción, de experimentación campesina, trabajamos con los agricultores primero en la recuperación de sus semillas nativas, en la multiplicación de estas semillas y a través de diferentes procesos de sostenibilidad, tratamos de avanzar hacia una finca más integrada.
So through processes of farmer experimentation, through action and learning with farmers and farmers groups in the rural communities, we've worked with them to recover and reproduce and spread these seeds, and to also work on creating more diversified local farms.
Y a través de procesos campesino a campesino, lo que buscamos era ir fortaleciendo esta propuesta agroecológica.
And through farmer-to-farmer sharing and extension processes, trying to spread this agroecological proposal and process.
Estos procesos a nivel de experimentación campesina que estaban sucediendo en las comunidades, luego tratamos de vincularlos a los mercados locales como una forma de que la biodiversidad recuperada sea más funcional para las familias.
So another strategy then has been to link farmers to local markets so that this increased production and increased diversity is of benefit both to rural communities and to consumers who are both rural and urban.
El principal objetivo de la recuperación de las variedades primero fue la seguridad alimentaria, pero después había excedentes que había la necesidad de ponerlos en el mercado. Entonces, para eso se desarrollaron diferentes estrategias para vincular a través de relaciones directas a productores con consumidores.
So the first goal working with these communities was to increase their level of food security for their families and their communities, but then with additional production, how to sell these into local markets in ways that was beneficial to rural communities as well as urban communities.
Entonces, hemos probado diferentes mecanismos como las canastas comunitarias, como ferias agroecológicas, relaciones directas campo-ciudad, con miras a generar ingresos para las comunidades, pero también para que ellos empiecen a gestionar nuevas iniciativas.
So we've tried different strategies. One is called canastas comunitarias. It's like a CSA kind of model, and fairs, where farmers are able to sell their food and to create a more beneficial system both for rural and urban consumers and producers.
Finalmente, los agricultores y los consumidores han estado involucrados en movimientos más amplios a nivel nacional a través de campañas por consumo responsable. Este momento estamos con una campaña de las 250,000 familias tratando de promover la agroecología.
And then finally, they've linked this to wider campaigns and movements in the country with wider networks to promote responsible local consumption. The Que Rico Es picture here to the right was how delicious and wonderful is local, consumption of local food. And then have linked this further to a campaign to try to get and promote 250,000 families in the country to commit to eating sustainable, healthy local food as sort of a tipping point strategy and public communications and organizing kind of campaign.
Y finalmente, nuestra experiencia es que hay bastante espacio para trabajar en la agroecología, promoverlo a través de estas relaciones campo-ciudad.
So in conclusion, we just think there's a lot of space and opportunity to continue to strengthen agroecology, and also in particular in this space of relationships between urban and rural communities to help foment it further. Yeah, thank you.
Now we're going to hear from Vern Gorey.
Yeah, thank you. Well, I must first warn you that I'm speaking English in my language, so you might have problem with my accent, my African accent. So please listen keenly. If you have a challenge, draw my attention. Well, the second problem is that I'm supposed to tell a story that for me I could take a whole day to tell. And I'm supposed to do it in 10 minutes. I don't know how to do it, but I'll try. But the fortune is that my colleague Ross has told a story. Most of what she said is applicable in the South. It's applicable in Africa as well. The only difference is that for Africa, I think the issue is about how to address our food situation, where there's supposed to be a food crisis in Africa. And we're trying to find a way out. And I think the solution, well, Africa has its own food system. And we've always had it for centuries. And our food system is not just about food, it's not about feeding, it's not about eating. For us, food is also about our cultural identity. In my country, Ghana, every tribe, we have about 54 tribes, then each tribe can be identified by the food they eat. I come from the northern part, and I'm identified with we eat is that's what we eat, that's what we're identified about. And you go to Ashanti and they eat fufu, and that's what they eat 3 times a day, and that's what you identify the Ashanti about. You go to Accra and they eat kenke, and that's what they eat 3 times a day. That's how you identify them. And so for them, for us, food is not just about a commodity for commercialization. It's about our own identity. And therefore, talk about food system needs to address these things. Unfortunately, to address the food situation, the solution has been to impose the industrial model of agriculture, which for us is basically about increasing productivity. I know they say there's this G8 Alliance for Nutrition and Food is supposed to move 50 million Africans out of hunger. That's assuming that our hunger is just about feeding, but our hunger is more than that. It's about our culture, it's about our way of life. And therefore, industrial agriculture cannot be the solution. Secondly, the solution that has been presented to us in the form of industrial agriculture has its own challenges, which are probably not known by many people who want to facilitate the displacement of the African food system. Because in Africa, our food system, as I said, has been managed by our farmers who've had their own knowledge system for managing what I would call ecological knowledge system. They have their own ecological knowledge system that they've used to manage our food system. For example, to take off soil, the challenge of our agriculture is that the soil fertility is reducing. And farmers managed it in a way. I think Steve mentioned it. For example, the industrial agriculture requires that we clear our lands of all trees in order to be able to use tractors to plow. But in our system, where we use a simple hose or a bullock plow or whatever, we planted our crops together with the trees in such a way that the leaves that fall from the trees fertilize the soil. They improve the quality of the soil, which is very different from the modern agricultural system where we remove all the organic material and then use chemical fertilizers. Unfortunately, the solution is very short term. Maybe in the first 1-2 years, you might get increased yields. But in the coming years, it falls. And that is what is happening in Ghana. I know when I was a kid, after colonization, in the effort to catch up of the West, our president at that time, Kwame Nkrumah, introduced modernization of agriculture as a policy. And at that time, Kwame Nkrumah was leaning more to the east, to Russia. So they want to import these huge snow plows to come and plow our soils. But in Africa, our soil is as thin as this. It's not like here where it's deep. It's very thin. So these tractors came in, dug up the subsoil, and impacted it. And today, if you go to most parts of Ghana, you find that nothing is growing on it because a hard pan has developed under the soil. So trees cannot even go through. So that is the effect of the industrial model on agriculture since that time. Secondly, if it comes to seed, our farmers had their own way of managing seed, where they were able to select the best seeds and able to replant that. The system was that people could share seeds among your relatives. If you didn't have, you could go to your friends and have seeds. Today, the modernization model imposes a seed that is patented by somebody maybe sitting in America here. It's patented by scientists who are producing it, which doesn't allow our farmers to select and replant the same seed. It doesn't allow our farmers to share the seed. It's not allowed because it's commercialized and somebody has to make profit. Our farmers dealt with the issue of climate change. If we talk about water, changing patterns of water, we had a way of plowing that we maintained water in the soil within the farms. So these are the methodologies, the technologies we had at that time. And so for us, we think that if we want to improve our food system, it's not about displacing it completely. It's about improving or building upon what farmers already know. Farmers already have solutions to their problem. So how do we improve that? How do we bring new technology? We're not saying that we don't want new technology. No, that's wrong. We want science. But we're talking about a situation where we bring technologies that are appropriate and that build and strengthen our own technologies. That is what we are looking for, and therefore that is what we are promoting. We think that ecological farming is what would support the food system in Africa. Our system was such that it was based on family farming. Where the farmer in Africa, our land is all divided up into families, little pieces, and every family owned a piece of land. And they use their family labor, they use their seed, they use their knowledge to produce on that. That is the model that we have. The industrial model wipes away this one. It has forced governments to take these pieces of land in order to produce, make available large-scale or large land for investors. So what is happening in Africa now is the new technologies introducing land grabbing, where people are losing land farmers are losing their land, families are losing their land, and particularly women, who are the real farmers in Africa, are the people who are suffering. And so we are saying that we need to look at Africa's problem, trying to find African solutions. And what do we want from America? How can America help us in this case? We think that America can help by supporting the African food system, by supporting the small family farming system, which is what is not just Africa, also in the whole of the South. How do we strengthen the small family system? How do we bring in technology? How do we bring Western science to improve upon the technologies that are farmers? How do we improve the ecological way of farming, which builds the soil? It's long-term investment against the short-term investment that the modern technologies are improving. So for us, for example, right now we have philanthropists from America like Bill Gates that is pumping millions of dollars into Africa. But basically, the millions is about supporting business, private sector to invest. It's not about supporting families to feed themselves. It's about supporting the private sector to invest and make profit. Our farmers are being turned into contract farmers to produce what America needs and not to produce what feeds that meets the hunger of the African, which is beyond just eating, but all the other needs of the farmer. And so we think that if we're going to get any support from America, ordinary Americans like us, I think we need to talk to our government the kind of policies. We should have policies that actually don't say force, but coerce our farmers, our governments into supporting the family farming system that we have. Because as of now, USAID is very strong in Ghana. And what are they supporting? They're supporting a commercialization program, commercial farming program in Africa, in Ghana. They want food production to be done only by commercial producers, which means small-scale farmers lose out. How do we get USAID to change that policy? How do we, Bill Gates is pumping millions of dollars. How do we get Bill Gates, for example, to focus on supporting the ecological technologies that our farmers have, rather than bringing genetically modified seeds, which is what they are doing into Africa, which is displacing our own seeds? I think I'll stop here, and then if there are any questions, you can take it. As I told you, I could speak the whole day about this. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Any questions from the audience for the panelists?
Obviously, farming is rural. Is there any sort of like urban viewpoint that you've gotten? I mean, are the urban areas, obviously you've worked in multiple countries, but do you think they're looking more to globalizing and kind of being, I want Nike and Hostess cupcakes, or is it a thing of, I want the African dish, or I want my own culture? Is there any sort of compass that you've noticed? Or is it buying out of necessity?
Do you understand?
Yeah, well, if I understand your question, you talk about whether the food system should be globalized. Is that what we want? Or whether we want a food system that meets our local needs in terms of our diet, in terms of our culture? I think you can look at it from two angles. You know, in Africa, in Ghana, we have two systems running. We have the rural, ordinary people, ordinary Africans out there. You have governments and their whole, development agenda, which is about the urban population. And therefore, the policies are more about globalization, as somebody said. Rice, for example, is now become an everyday meal because the policy encourages importation of rice. It doesn't support the production of our local maize, our local millet, and other things. So we have this challenge there, where the ordinary people are looking for the local food. That's what they're going for. But governments are making policies towards globalization. How do we globalize our economy? So how do we produce to meet global needs rather than our local needs? That's what I can say about that.
Yeah, I was just going to say I think I quite agree, and the context, at least in Port-au-Prince, is that young people in particular migrate to Port-au-Prince to find wage labor, right? To find a job. And the food you can buy with wage labor, like a cheap plate of food, is rice-based, right? But that sort of, that dream of wage labor in Port-au-Prince is a dream, right? And so many people, in fact, who've gone to Port-au-Prince, I know a couple families who their children have gone to Port-au-Prince in hopes of working and then sending back money to rural areas, but the reverse happens. They go to Port-au-Prince and farmers have to send plantains and yams to Port-au-Prince as a food supplement for those folks living in urban populations. So I think that there's absolutely something related, sort of the way that food circulation is globalized, but also the relationship between wage labor and what you can buy for cash versus what you can buy with the existing connections that you have to rural food producers.
Yeah, just quickly, and staying on the case of Haiti, obviously urban agriculture is important, and there's opportunities there. It's not a strength of what we do with our partners. But I would also say, like, for example, in Haiti, and which is reflective of many countries, sustainable, decentralized, healthy rural development and soil, conserving soil and regenerating rural communities and soil is essential for when you have storms like the one that just happened, that you're not having, landslides wiping out urban areas, and the connection between rural and urban, as was mentioned, is crucial on many levels within families and across communities. So, keeping this focus on the healthy rural areas is one part of the equation that we focus on as well.
My name is Keisha Nicholas, and I'm working with AME SEDA, Service and Development Agency, doing work in Haiti and parts of Africa. And from what you were asking about, it made me think about the fact that there are people in the communities in both locations or in all over the world who are taking pride in having American products. I was in Accra, and there's a big billboard with a nice family sitting at the table. We buy American chicken. And it was supposed to be right. So how do we work on making sure the community is ready to embrace the traditional practices that they've had, so that we can continue to make it more ecological and continuing and have food security?
Did you want to comment?
I think that happens everywhere. For example, in Ecuador, the supermarkets are growing very fast. So, but now I think the urbanization process is growing very fast also. So we cannot talk about rural and urban areas. So it's like a mix, because for the people living in the cities, as our colleague said, many of the products come from the community. So they have access to this cheap food, like fast food, all the time, because it's obviously cheaper. But also they are trying to promote their own food. So I think the local food system is changing, and there are a lot of conditions that happen in each context. So, yeah.
It's a very interesting issue, and it's a reality for us. With this whole idea of commercialization of the food in Africa, in Accra, she said, it's about American rice. And I don't know whether I had time to look at our television, the adverts, huge adverts, a lot of money being spent on advertisements. Rice has to be American, the way it is presented. And development or modernization should be look like an American. In order to look like an American, you have to eat American rice. So for the youth, the young people, in my own home, I'm an advocate for local food. In my own home, if I buy local rice there, they find ways of pushing it, let it fall, and they sweep it out. And they go and bring American rice. That is the reality. It's gone down into our own psyche, into our culture. But I think that was a business, technique that they've played on us. If you go back to a rural community, there are still a lot of them That's still, yes, they still think about the traditional food, and well, as I said, it's for different purposes. So in the rural sector, yes, but fortunately, the majority of the population is still rural. And so we are really working very hard. Particularly, we have women who are the people who feed the family in the communities, who've organized them. And so they are the people who are actually revitalizing, introducing, if I put it that way, our traditional food. So in the rural communities, yes, there's a lot of hope. But in the urban areas, it's a very difficult task because of commercialization, because of internet, because of radio, television, and all that stuff. If you want to look modern, you go to fast food. You don't go to a chop bar. Because in Ghana, we have a chop bar, which is our fast food. It's where they sell the local food. If you go there, it means either you are rural, you are not developed. You have to go to a fast food. So that's a true observation, and it's one of the issues that we are dealing with, how to revitalize our traditional food.
Go ahead.
Can I ask that you go back to the last slide where the point was made of connection in Ecuador? In Ecuador with other groups? Yes, this one. And bring attention to this, mi familia quiere ser. Both yourself and the honorable gentleman from Ghana have made the point that food is not only about sustenance, not only about nutrition, it is part of culture. And the reason why I point to ser is because ser means you want to be in an existent long-term framework, not to be as is, I'm here today, I am there this afternoon. I think that the words that we use are very important, because to talk of family farming in a global context will put you in the frame of family farming that are full cities guided by drones in the Midwest of this country. So I say to you, family farm is a very, it's like the hook that they put in the fish mouth to bring him out. Be very careful in using that term. My question comes because I'm aware of efforts globally, domestically, to value social capital, this beyond nutrition viewpoint, community, to value natural resources. And in an urban setting, that could be the way we see DC developing, where they're now requiring that the facades of the old buildings be maintained, right? And that is called integrative reporting. So the short-term thinking of today's financial reporting of balance sheet, income statement, cash flow, says unless it's a transaction, unless she buys this paper from me, we haven't exchanged anything. The viewpoint of the Sustainable Accounting Standards Bureau here in the US, the viewpoint of the integrated reporting of Europe, of South Africa, is that these are capitals that need to be valued financially by all who are accessing capital. So the point here is SER is synonymous with an integrated approach, exactly what you have spoken, and brings business to be accountable for that kind of engagement. And it shifts us from the either or. Are we either going to have commercialization or we're going to have indigenous production systems, right? Into a framework of how do we value the seed systems? How do we value TZ as a culture of the northern people of Ghana? And so I encourage the dialogue to
financial value for social capital, these women that he keeps talking about have more social capital than we could all put together in this room today. Huh? And environmental capital. Because business themselves are looking for new assets in which to invest. So the SARE concept, we fail in English because we use to be as if it's the same tomorrow as it is 40 years from now. But the SARE concept is coming to business because they too want to find new assets and want to be in existence long term. The MBA school needs to be involved in this discussion.
True.
I'll give a quick response. It's very compelling, the argument. I think one of the problems that goes along with a financial valuation of the environment is that it can simplify the complex ways in which things interact by putting a label on them in terms of a value. So, and especially when we talk about land, right? Because value, depending on how you define it, means you use land one way or another. But talking about the potentials of land means that farmers' variable uses of lands can be sort of thought about in different and diverse ways. So I wanted to put that out there, that potentially this excess of valuing can potentially simplify the complex systems that we are trying to account for into and put them into a financial system that may or may not be at its heart exploitative. So that's sort of the other side of the coin there.
Can I make a comment as well? I wanted to go back to the slide. So absolutely, that's okay. But yeah, the questions we ask and what we're going to measure, is a lot of what defines the answers we come up with, right? So this was, as I mentioned earlier on, this important report, which understood agricultural to be multifunctional, another way of saying what you're saying. So it's not just about inputs and outputs of production, but it's about employment, it's about culture, it's about, environmental well-being, it's about women's well-being, and resilience to climate change in terms of, local seed systems that are strong instead of, 3 companies owning all the seed varieties in the world. So, and there's a whole true cost accounting movement, which you may be aware of around, food and agriculture. So yeah, I think it's crucial that and that's part of the recommendations that are coming out around this, how we are going to measure things need to shift and have this broader multifunctional understanding of agriculture and food systems and what they're all about.
That's a great follow-on picture because it gets to, yes, advocacy for, I always find it interesting that we're forever talking about the value of indigenous people and we're never really seeing where rubber hits the road on that one. We need to bring in capital market formation and development, okay? Because it is the financial markets that are the mortar between the different bricks, be it the brick of urban and the brick of rural, the brick of women and the brick of men, the brick of youth and the brick of aged, the brick of the analfabetismo, ¿cómo se dice?
Illiterate.
And the well access, those that have had access. And because the bricks keep talking to each other as if it's either or, that mortar of the capital markets consistently have their meetings. As a matter of fact, they're having their annual meetings right here in Washington this week. Separately and on an agenda that is weighted more about expediency than about raising the capacity of Southern Hemisphere capital markets to price locally. I think that Haiti has Cap-Haïtien has a very good example of what can be done when you understand the different dimensions. Yeah. There's local purchasing. I know the NGO there. That are locally purchasing the peanuts. You know which one I'm talking about. Meds for kids, right?
I thought you were going to say Caracol, and I was going to.
No. And that whole concept expanded would suggest that agroecological advocacy should be part of the solution to the climate change agreement that was signed in Paris in December, for which at the G20 meeting there in China, President Obama and, give me the name of the China guy, agreed. Agreed, right? And I say this because we are living in what may seem very challenging times, but very challenging times also shape times with great opportunity. And forming partnerships across those kinds of climate change lines could see emerge a whole thrust behind local purchasing requirements, right? Could see emerging policies that say these fast foods, we can't stop them from existing, but why not they have a carbon footprint minimization requirement? We have the Caribbean that has a finished food product import bill that is staggering. That should not be the case when we know that island states are going to be amongst the hardest hit from rising seas and volatility in weather patterns. So there is opportunity for alliance here if we go at this with bringing in business.
Does anyone want to respond to that?
I think we covered it.
Okay.
Hi, so I've been involved in a lot of different discussions about defining agroecology, and most of those have been in either a American science-dominated context or in an American academic context. So I'm curious, from a more international perspective and from a more grassroots perspective, how do you guys define agroecology beyond just a set of biological or agricultural practices?
Do you want to respond?
Yep. Yeah, I think in our context, we have many definitions of agroecology. So in the context of Ecuador, we have a definition that is political when you are talking about food sovereignty. There is also a scientific, because you need to learn a lot of principles around that, but also is a technical definition. So it depends in the context of you are working on. So, but especially for countries like Ecuador, we have a very strong vision in politics. So that is why a lot of groups of consumers and producers are trying to promote a better way to eat and to production and circulation of the product. So I think it's different ways to see the same issue.
Comment before. So, yeah, I think sometimes we overcomplicate the issue and and confuse ourselves more than clarify. But I think one simple way that we see it is trying to farm with nature instead of against it, and that's messy and it's a transition, and you have to start with where you are and try to move towards that. And as Ross mentioned, obviously there are policy dimensions of that. And there are also process dimensions of it, and core to that for us are farmer innovation as core to it, which is a constant process of improving your farming systems, which that's what farming is, since it was invented, is farmers innovating with nature, and then sharing this, farmer to farmer and sort of the broader movement piece of it are also elements as well. But Berna or anybody else, I don't know if you want to.
Maybe just one word. Well, sometimes people like to compare organic farming and ecological farming. But as I said, I think ecological farming is beyond that. Organic farming is just like commercializing your production system. It doesn't. But ecological farming has to do with sovereignty, that farmers or producers are in control, that they are deciding what they want to produce and what they want to do with the product. And so that's why, for example, for the Alliance for Food Sovereignty, we say ecological farming is a science by itself, but it's also a movement. And at the same time, it's a practice, work of nature, you know. So these are three things you look at in ecological farming, which makes it different from organic farming, because organic farming is still, a lot of the time, is also about monoculture. It's just also about increasing production. The difference might be in terms of the kind of technologies you use, you know. So that's what I'll add to that.
Go ahead.
I'm just wondering if you guys have ran into any situations where maybe the agroecological principles are kind of coming to head with the traditional principles. I mean, on this chart, it's nice because it's, you know, starting at a different place and moving forward, but I think there could be times where the traditional practices and agroecological practice come to a direct contradiction. What would you do in that situation? Or, I mean, what if you would end up, you know, like fundamentally changing the culture?
Well, I don't know if, well, the mic is in front of me, so let me make my comment. It's an interesting question, but, and that is where we need some kind of intervention in improving our indigenous knowledge. You know, sometimes culture is location specific. So what might be normal in one area would be different elsewhere. For example, if you take land management, and traditionally we've done this slash and burn, where you cut the stuff and burn it. Traditionally they do it. But then you can turn this over, the same thing. And that's what Steve talked about. How do you farm with the trees also growing there? So for example, we have this regenerative tree system, science, I'll call it, where we tell the farmers that instead of cutting it off, prune it. Prune it in such a way that you can have your fuel wood, because sometimes they cut it because they need a wood to cook. So you can prune by cutting up some branches that reduce the shade. And then you can have the tree still growing on the field. And then you can also have the crops. So that's why we're saying that it's not like indigenous knowledge is the thing. No. There are challenges of it, and that is where we need external knowledge to improve upon it. In this particular case, we brought in external knowledge, the idea about pruning, which we introduced. So it's still their own knowledge system. And so it's spreading so fast. It's so natural for them. They don't find it different from what they've been doing, just that it's been modified. Yeah.
Just a quick comment. Did you want to make a comment?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Okay. Yeah, I think so. When we are talking about the small farmers, like the farmers that we work in Ecuador, we work with the very, very poor farmers. So they live in the highlands, something like that. And we talk about Andean agriculture. And many of the principles of Andean agriculture are very similar to agroecological principles. So when we have this kind of contradiction is when organizations can work together with farmers and try to test a lot of innovations with them and prove what is the best for them. But yeah, I think that is the thing.
That's okay. You can go to
Yeah.
another question.
Okay.
Thank you all. This has been really fascinating. I wanted to ask about the degree to which farmers are mobilizing to change policy. So Ecuador has really famous and extraordinary policies on food sovereignty. They really set the stage for the world and on rights of Pachamama
Yeah.
and on the seed laws. Yet now there's this disjuncture, there's discrepancy between what's actually happening. So are communities in Ecuador still mobilizing to hold governments accountable to the great laws that are on the books? And also in Ghana, to what degree are farmers mobilizing to change laws and to affect agroecological and food sovereignty principles in policy? And I guess also maybe in Haiti.
Yeah, Yeah, in Ecuador, there are producer and consumer are growing, the groups of trying to defend that the Constitution said. I mean, the derechos de de la naturaleza, and also now there are a very active, how do you say, discussion about the seed law, because the government is trying to change everything about how you can exchange seeds, and we need now, it's supposed, a certificate seeds. So I think the groups of civil society is still working on that, so very active in different ways. So, yeah.
Bern, I'm going to put up the photo of the fertilizer. Can you?
Okay.
Okay.
Yes, in Ghana, I think that is where civil society has become very strong, very important, because most of the time, most of the farmers we work with are not informed about what is going on. You know, they send extension packages to them which they don't understand. For example, take the issue of seed. They say, oh, you know, that your seed, we have this seed here, it'll double your production, it'll make you rich, you'll get out of poverty, and coerce them into doing it. So what we did is first to educate them, let them know the reality. And so we've done quite a lot of education on seed. And as at now, small farmers are holding our parliament. They are supposed to, the government went and passed and signed a protocol in Arusha which allows for this a harmonized seed breeders bill, which gives more power, more rights to the breeders over the farmers. Now, Parliament is supposed to ratify this before it becomes law. Now, we mobilize the farmers. They've gone to Parliament to demonstrate. Women have done demonstrations against that bill. They have explained why they think that bill will be detrimental to them. So up to today, Parliament cannot pass the bill. The Speaker had to tell them to go back, educate the people before they can talk about the bill. So the bill is held now for the past 2 years. They can't pass it. Secondly, even the issue of chemical fertilizers. These companies have, you know, done so much education, advertisement about the importance of chemical fertilizers, you know. But we did also alternative education on the impact of these fertilizers on their soil and even their own economy, because it's so expensive. It's the bulk of the cost. And we told them about the value of organic manure. The challenge has been, how do we have enough of it? Because even to get the biomass, organic matter, to produce organic manure is difficult. And so we made a case about how to manage sanitation in Accra, for example. There's so much rubbish being heaped. Can we compost this stuff? So the farmers made a case. They had a discussion, a forum of government, and usually at that forum they ask for government subsidy for chemical fertilizers. This time they asked for subsidy for producing organic manure. And government listened. So today there's now a company in Accra, the waste management company, that is converting the waste into manure. And that is what we have there, which is now being sold as alternative to the chemical fertilizers. So yes, it is once farmers are informed about what the issues are, they can take the issues. And it's this election year, so we're taking advantage of it. In fact, when I go back home, the farmers are proposing a forum for all the political parties that are standing elections. Bring your manifestos. Let us see how it addresses our concerns. Those that address our concerns, we shall consider you. If it's against our consent, we'll vote you out. Yeah, so there's a lot that is going on in that area.
I guess just a note about these efforts in Haiti in terms of civil society organizing, right? Elections have not really happened for the past couple of years, and the condition of the Haitian state is not great. I mean, in fact, it's been argued, right, that actually the state is the aid. NGOs are actually sort of take the role of the state. But there's still these remarkable movements, and I don't know if you all work with the MPP.
We collaborate.
Right. Yeah. So and I think it was maybe 6 years ago, the Mouvement Paysan Papaye was given a giant shipment of Monsanto hybrid seeds, and they burned them. Right. And so it was a remarkable message sent from a collection of peasants back to sort of this conglomeration of aid and government apparatus saying, we don't want that road. Right, so I think that there are these powerful moments that have been taken advantage by these peasant movements.
One more question.
I think I had a much more complicated question, but let's skip that one.
Go with a simple one.
Just for Ms. Brescia. The majority of the countries that you work in seem to be in West Africa, just south of the Sahel. What reason was there for choosing? Was there a reason behind choosing that specific region to really focus on, or was it a matter of happenstance? Why there to start to focus your work on?
Well, our strategy is to work in regional programs on action and learning with our partners to try to spread these strategies at the farm level, across communities, and at the policy level. And that we've given you some examples of that today. Some of it was, obviously there's tremendous need in that area in the Sahel. We've also had a history of working there, and some of it grew out of that organic history and relationships with organizations like Burns and others in the other countries. So both, the need and the opportunity. And again, there are these crises points in our system in places like the Sahel, also in our own health in the United States and in climate change globally. And I think, partly those crisis points are creating opportunities for us to try to build these alternative movements. So in the same way in Latin America, we have a more dispersed region, but we're trying to work on common themes that I mentioned of, seed systems and local markets and trying to build towards these same kind of, regenerative processes there. And then we are working to build a South Asia strategy. We're in Nepal and plan to be expanding to India to build a similar sort of critical mass of experiences. There's wonderful experiences there to build upon, but, how can we, contribute to those processes?
Thank you all for coming. I wanted to close and ask people on the panel to offer up one takeaway for the audience regarding the barriers and opportunities for agroecology and food sovereignty. So let's start over here and we'll go across.
Thank you so much. It's been good learning from you. There's a lot of learned. But probably one of the issues I would talk about the challenges of agroecology in Africa is to do with the policy, our national policies. But our national policies are not designed by our governments. They're designed by the policies from America. US aid is very strong in Ghana, and they have shaped our whole agricultural policy. The whole idea of commercialization is being pushed by US aid. So what I want to ask is, for ordinary people out here, how do we influence the American policy in such a way that it helps our governments to put in the right policies, particularly in terms of agroecology? A lot of the politicians, I speak to them privately, they say, it makes sense. But when I'm in parliament, they vote according to a party, not according to individuals. And the party is about how do we respond to the US policy? How do we respond to all these global policies that are going on? And so for me, I think if we can influence our policymakers here to make laws that support agroecology, our governments will do it. As long as the US policy doesn't address it, they wouldn't do it. So for me, this is the takeaway I would appeal to America to see how you can. I know, well, America is a leader in the world. Whatever America says is what the world says. And so if you want to influence, if you want to have change in Africa in terms of agri policy, then we need to look at our policy making here. How do we get Hillary Clinton or, what's the name of the other one? Yeah, I don't know which we are. How do we get them to be sympathetic to agroecology to the extent that they make policies that support agroecology in Africa. Thank you.
Shoot, took the words right out of my mouth. Quite, yes. That in an odd way, the votes that, if you are all American citizens, the votes that you have an incredible impact on the policies, or can have an incredible impact on the policies of USAID, who's accountable to Congress ultimately. And I will just say no more, that I think that's an incredible power that we often forget in terms of thinking about foreign policy, foreign aid, and its intersection with agroecology.
Yeah, I think when we are talking about to strengthen for local food systems, everybody's part of the food system. So for me, the question for you is how you can be involved in this change from each aspect you want to be important. So.
To me, I think the main point is that solutions exist, and they exist at the farmer level too frequently as islands of success, and also in terms of institutional innovations and social innovations, and at the policy level. So the question is, how do we spread those, and how do we change the norm and create this transition? We're actually publishing a book of case studies, trying to draw on these two case studies and others, which will hopefully be out in January, to share further those. But I think in a lot of ways it's a hugely challenging moment, but also a moment of great opportunity and hope as well to build out these solutions.
All right, thank you very much.